please give a warm welcome to Josh Brolin. Yep.
Hi, guys. It's so nice to walk in here and have it be full, you know? It's always that thing where you think you're going to walk in, there's 4 people. You go, that sucks.
Actually, when I introduced the movie, I don't know if you remember this, for No Country for Old Men, you and I were right on the same spot.
Same stage.
In the same theater, yeah.
Yeah.
But you look handsomer.
So do you.
Well, thank you.
You had longer hair then.
I did have longer hair.
Yeah.
And you had blacker hair.
I did. Thank you very much for pointing that out.
No, but it looks very distinguished.
Well,
I like it.
Thank you very much.
When I introduced the screening, I mentioned that I read your book. I expected it to be a fantastic book. I never expected it to be so incredibly poetic and literary.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, tell us about the process of writing this book.
I mean, it's really funny talking about this book because I remember, I haven't seen this movie for a long time, and then I'll get into this.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
My wife and I came early. We got here early because we live here now again. And yeah, we're very happy to live here again. But I lived here from 79 to 84, and we were on APS, and it was foggy. But we got here super quick. So we walked in the back, and I haven't seen the movie for probably 5 years. Maybe a little bit more. But to see the last 20, 30 minutes of the movie, I remember every Q&A that Ethan and I and Javier did. And the movie leaves you with this kind of, I never knew how to describe it. We come out of here doing Q&As and people wouldn't talk because they would still be stunned, you know.
It's an amazing film that, like, it's all, the characters, each of them, you know, it's action-packed, but each actor, it's all about behavior. And
the whole thing is about behavior, and it's about quiet. I don't know if you could make this movie today. I don't know. Movies are different today. And to see a movie like this on the big screen, you're impacted. And so going to the book, you know, when you do a memoir, when somebody who's been around for 40 years does a memoir, like Cher does a memoir after being around for, you know, longer than 40 years, no insult intended, is like, there's things that you want to know. There's things, you know, 9 days with Greg Allman, I want to know. You know, and I went about it in a little different way. You know, it started to kind of dictate itself. So there's milestones in the book that you can't deny because Goonies, there's a parallel back and forth between Goonies and No Country. Because those are 2 major milestones in my life that are undeniable. It was the first movie I did, and then I went 22 years kind of walking the desert of trying to be a substantial, validated actor, or, you know, whatever, and then I kind of said, okay, I'm a working actor. That's what I am, and that's okay. I'm doing great character parts. I'm making a little bit per year, and then No Country happens out of nowhere, and then suddenly I have choice, and I'm working with the best filmmakers out there. None of that was designed. Therefore, the book is not designed.
But you don't hold back on anything, but the nonlinear quality to the book. You say that the book dictated itself, so that nonlinear quality that you go back and forth between time, and it wasn't
because here, I mean, it just reminded me of it because I'm watching. No Country is very like vignettes. It's like suddenly she's walking in the house. You know, it's not like moment by moment. It's just like paintings, but it's a linear thing.
Yeah.
And then you put the story together in your head, and the thing is what the Coens do is they let you fill in the blanks. What happened in the middle? What are they thinking? What are they thinking during the quiet moments? You know, when he's looking at the lock, when Tommy Lee Jones is looking at the lock in the bathroom when he thinks he's going to be there. Oh, and then he shows up, and Javier's waiting, and you hear the same sounds that Tommy's hearing, and then he goes in and he's not there. So is he the Grim Reaper? Did he disappear? Is he just a figment of our, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you see the lock on the window, and the window isn't unlocked. So he didn't get out, so what did he do? So you start to fill in, it gives you all this space to fill in. So when I wrote the book, there's a lot of quiet in the book, even though it's, when I write, it's loud. It's like very profound, not profound, but intense moments. It's very extreme, you know? So I think that there's a parallel between watching No Country and how I wrote that book, because it's not typically memoir-ish about a professional trajectory. It's more emotional.
Well,
I mean, I hope anyway.
no, it's amazing in that regard that it's not, we're used to celebrity memoir that is like, you know, linear and also sanitized, and you don't airbrush anything.
No, mine's completely soiled.
Is there any, I mean, was it, I don't even know how to articulate this. Were you fearful of how much you put yourself out there?
Not until later. I was in Santa Barbara. I did the Audible in Santa Barbara. And you know, when I'm you're by yourself when you're writing, you know? It's almost like acting, and you prepare for a role and you don't think about people seeing it. You kind of get stuck in this capsule of, you know, wanting to live up to that kind of creative standard of the story. So when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about anybody else, how it's going to be perceived, how I'm going to be perceived. And I think me especially, because I've been in no man's land. So, you know, somebody says, oh, he's he's an actor that hasn't hit, and he's kind of, you know, he's not worth going to, you know, and he's not valid, he's not valuable. And then the Coen brothers hire you, and then suddenly everybody wants to work with you. So you learn to kind of not listen to people. You know what I mean? Just do what you do. So I think with the book, I didn't really worry about any of that, which enabled me to be super honest. And then I was in the middle of doing the Audible, literally like stuttering through it. And I suddenly realized that people were going to read it. And I wished, like in that moment, I wished that I could burn all evidence that it ever existed. I went, oh my God, what have I done? And I'm not a spiraler, but I spiraled for a month. And I called writers, I called George Saunders, I called Billy Collins, I called every writer that I knew. And I said, basically, I'm fucking freaking out, man, what do I do? And their answer was usually, welcome. You're a writer now. Now you get it.
You in the book, it comes across that you have a self-hate relationship with acting, but writing you feel more connected to.
Because writing was like the survival, you know. It was this creative outlet that I could always rely on, and I could always be honest, and it was mine, and there was complete ownership. You know, I've written a few books, and they went in the corner, and they accumulated dust, and you know, I never thought about putting it out there. But writing was always. I mean, I think it's 91 journals now, full journals. There's 3 big bins of journals. So the writing was always there from 8 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old on. You know, during No Country, I wrote a ton. You know, I wrote a lot. And then I made a little book in the end. And I gave it to an assistant to check, because I can't spell. So I had her do I had her check all the spelling and all that, and I guess I wasn't paying her enough or something, and I gave it to him as a wrap gift, and there's a lot of misspellings in it, but it's a good book. You should read it sometime.
I was just struck from the get-go about the prose, the poetry of your writing. Were you always, you say you've written for so long, were you always aware that of the poetry that you're writing? I mean, I wouldn't want to butcher your words, but the opening when you talked about your mom and like you drank as much as your mom, I was just like, wow.
But it's not the poetry, it's the absurdity. I think that I've always loved poets, and I've always responded to poets, and then I tried to write like the poet, and I tried to write like Kerouac, and I tried to write like Ferlinghetti, and I tried to write like Norman Mailer. It never worked. But you do that. It's like a painter copying another painter, and then you start to understand color, and you start to understand, and the painting's not any good, and then one day you have a voice. You know, it's like acting. It's the same thing. It's like one day you have a skill. And you go, oh, so, maybe it was an affectation. I went in a corner and slapped myself and was crying and all this kind of stuff. And after a while, I mean, I have great conversations with Javier about it. What we used to do when we were young was insane.
Yeah.
And now we just work. We are workers, my friend.
Your mother
Yes.
in the book it's an amazing character, and you don't hold back in any way about the way you described her, your relationship with her. Was it hard for you to dig deep and write about her and your relationship with her?
No, because there was no intention that it was going to be so mother heavy. I went into it putting together 40 or 50 really poorly written pages and trying to sell it. And then I found an agent in New York who took me on, and she just said, keep writing. And I wrote and probably wrote about 450 pages. And then I started to edit myself. And then she told me after a while, stop writing. Please, God, stop writing. and because the stories started to flood in, and people said, do you take all these from your journals? And I didn't. The journals just instigated the kind of initiation of the book. And then as I started to cut, I realized what was left. It's like, what are you willing to let go of? What is the least profound? What is the most trying to be poetical? And then get into the story, get into who you are, get into what defined you and how you rebelled against it and started. At what point did you start to define yourself or allow some kind of ownership of myself? And then suddenly you read it and you go, fuck, this is really mother heavy. This is very Oedipal. This is kind of wild. And am I ashamed of it? And no, I'm not. She had a massive impact on my life. She was, for better or worse, she was the Hunter S. Thompson of our house.
Yeah.
She was a nut. She spent time in Camarillo State Hospital. She was a nut. I don't know if she ever should have been a parent, but she was mine, so I embrace it fully.
But the Camarillo State Hospital,
Yeah. I don't.
Why didn't you deal with that chapter? Pun intended.
Because I intend to write 68 books.
Oh, okay.
No, because it's not needed. It's in the personality of the chapters with her. So that's more of a shock thing. It's like more of a name drop. It's like, why didn't I just say Bob Dylan? Why did I allude to Bob Dylan? And then that Bob Dylan chapter becomes a satire of one famous guy trying to impress another famous guy. That's where the writer, I think, comes in. And I'm not tooting my own horn at all, but I called myself on my own vanity. And I like that. I like accountability. So out of it came a reaction to constant accountability.
People are going to wonder the title,
Yeah.
Under the Truck. There is, at the beginning of the book, there is this drinking session that you have with your mom, and it's a drinking game, right? And then he ends up under the truck.
Yeah.
But is there a deeper?
I don't, I love interpret, you write what you write and then people interpret it, and I'm starting to get a whole, all these variations of what From Under the Truck is. It was supposed to be called Gasoline Bubble Bath, but that sounded like an adolescent book of poetry. And we came up with about 250 titles, and Under the Truck just kept popping back up. And so there's a chapter in there where I have a drinking contest with my mother's boyfriend, and she said, I wouldn't to him. And he ended up, the owner of the restaurant went outside and saw his leg sticking out from under the truck. And my mom says, I think the last line was something like, you don't fuck with us, or something like that. And, but From Under the Truck, I always saw is when somebody's under the truck, they're either fixing their truck or they're getting run over by it. So to me, there's many chapters in this book where I'm getting run over by the truck, not from a victim's point of view, but just as a reality. And then there's chapters where I'm fixing the truck.
Well, one of the
truck being my life.
Well,
Amen.
this is nonlinear, but one of my fondest memories about you is the fact that we do this Q&As after screenings, and then we're always outside waiting for a fancy SUV to show up to drop the talent for the Q&A. And then Sean, who's still working with me, the day of No Country for Old Men, we're outside waiting for Josh Brolin to show up, and then all of a sudden, here's a truck, a pickup truck, and there's Josh Brolin driving, and we were like, what the fuck? Where's the fancy limo? It's Josh Brolin driving his truck.
My Lamborghini's in the shop. I came in my truck today. I asked my wife's right there, and I said, we should probably go find a car wash because it's super dirty.
No, but I don't know if you know.
To present myself well, I am a successful actor, you know.
Yeah, but I don't know if you noticed, this time around we left a cone
No,
out
you
there
did.
waiting.
You did.
Yes.
Yeah, but see, what I love, and this is the essence of my life, I went and I stopped at the cone, and there was nobody there or anything, and I said, do I move the cone? And then finally I got out and removed the cone, thinking it may have been for somebody else, probably you.
No, it was actually, that was the Josh Brolin cone.
Cool, I'm glad.
Because
that's the truck cone.
Next time you come, you know that if there's a cone, that's for you.
That's for me.
The only person that shows up is in their own truck. Santa Barbara, there is a section in it that is actually very powerful, the Sito Kids, the Montecito Rats. It's so poignant about you growing up here.
There's a group, if you if you go onto the internet, and there's a group of, it's like surf cultures in different times. There was Dogtown and Z-Boys, and they were afraid of us, and even though they were older, and then we were afraid of the N-Men, who were up in Sacramento. And then there was Dahui in Hawaii, Eddie Rothman, and then there was Wolfpack, who was Kala. And then there was Bra Boys. There's a great documentary on the Bra Boys. And we all know each other now. A lot of those guys didn't make it, and a lot of my guys didn't make it. But we all know each other now because you either died or you got sober, basically. And so the Cedar Rats were, Montecito was not like it was now. It was a working class area, and there was a couple of rich people or whatever. But it was very different than it is now. And
you mean the Duchess and the Duke were not living?
No, the Duchess and the Duke were not. Yeah, they weren't here. They weren't born yet, by the way. And so we were just a group of guys. It was the beginning of punk rock. It was just a different era. It was a different era, and 36 out of 50 of those guys died.
But this group, the Sito Kids, Rats, were not. I mean, there were poor people, there were rich people. It was
all of that. It was a full mix of people. And then when we decided, we'd been back 4 months, and I never talked about moving back to Santa Barbara. There was just something stuck in my body about Santa Barbara, and my wife, so finally we were in Malibu, and Malibu never really, we were Venice Beach people, and we were Malibu. Went from Venice to Malibu when we started having kids. We said, this is going to be great. We knew a lot of people, but it never landed. There was something about Malibu that never landed. And then finally, when Malibu was done and all that, we kept looking on Zillow for years and years and years. Should we move to Europe? Should we move to here? Should we move to East Coast? And then I finally said Santa Barbara, even though we had said, this is it. This is where we're going to raise our children. And the first house that came up is the house that we bought, and it's Joe Walsh's old house, which made sense to me because I know there's cocaine under the floorboards. I'm positive. Not that I want it, because I don't, but I'll give it to somebody else. And I was so then we started making the move, and I started telling her, I started getting scared. I said, we can't do this, Our little girls are going to be in prison. It's going to be awful. We can't go back to Santa Barbara because I had this thing.
Because of the Cedar Rats?
I guess. Just some history that involved, which is the book, a lot of self-destruction and a lot of kind of like living in this chaotic
But at some point during that
vortex.
period, you decided to put a stop to it.
No, I got kicked out of my house in Santa Barbara. I had missed 36 out of 56 days of Santa Barbara High. Mm-hmm. And that's not why I got kicked out, but I got kicked out and I moved down with my dad, and I just really wanted to kind of get my shit together. Mm-hmm. So I made up a resume, 100%, total bullshit. There was the Libero Theater here. I made up a theater called the Librero International Theater. I've done a lot of plays there. It's in Italy, by the way.
Yeah. And that's how you got the Goonies.
And
based on
basically,
that made
after,
up.
I swear to God, after 350 auditions or whatever, I was just the right guy at the right time, who looked the right way, who said the words in the right way. And I truly believe that I accidentally got the Goonies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but before we move on to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
aspect, 50 of the Cedar Rats, out of 50, 37 have died.
Yeah, 36, 30, I don't know. We've lost count.
Why? What happened?
It was just a lot of drugs and a lot of accidents and a lot of drinking and a lot of guys, when they started hitting, Chad was the first one, the youngest, Manning, Lower Manning Park. And after that, it was one after the other. Bohawk and Razor Lips and Jason and...
Was Morgan Neville part of this group?
No, but Morgan Neville I know. And Jason Alexander, Morgan Neville, Mike Randolph. You know, there were a lot of people that were in Montecito that did great. You know, Danny O'Keefe. Oh, there's still people are still around and they're great. But they always had a foot out. They were in Montecito. Brian McWilliams, who runs the middle school.
What?
Yee. You know, really close friend. But those guys, and they were in it, but it wasn't, you know, they didn't have mohawks. They didn't have this. They had better relationships with their parents. They had better parents. I don't know. But then people I still are in contact with now. Morgan's doing amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I reach out to Morgan, and I'm like, hey, buddy. You know, and maybe I'll hear back. Maybe I won't. But...
he shows up here to the
he's
Q&As
amazing.
more often than you do.
He's, oh God. Well, I'm here now. I'm right around the corner. I can even get here in the fog. He's doing, and Jason Alexander's doing really well writing. It's cool.
Why is it that in the, I mean, don't get me wrong, I adore your book. I've read it twice.
Thank you.
Why is it that only Goonies and The Country for Old Men get the most, you know, time?
Yeah. I know. It's like I said, it kind of dictated itself. I mean, I wrote a lot more, and then and about other movies and about other moments. And there's movies that I love. There's No Country, and after No Country was American Gangster, and then there was W, and then there's a lot of really great experiences, but it became more of a personal journey, which is uncommon, I think, in the memoir world. And then also what's common in the memoir world, which I didn't know, is that about 95% of memoirs are written by someone else other than the subject, which I had no idea. I talked to Dave Grohl about it, and Dave Grohl's like, yeah, man, we're like the only people that wrote their own memoir. And I don't understand that because it's your vernacular, it's your... But I think, again, it's very personal. You know, there's one thing about, I fucking hated that director. That guy was an asshole. And then the world writes about it. She hated that director, or Josh hated that director. And it becomes sensationalistic. And I didn't want to do that. I may later, if I need money.
Getting sober is one... You know, it's prominent in the book and very poignant. Tell us about what was the. I mean, you address it somewhat in the book. What was the wake-up call that you needed? It was 2013.
2013, November 1st, 2013, and my wife and I, my wife now and I, had gotten iridescent onesies, see-through iridescent onesies, and we thought that would be two really good things to wear and be on our bikes and go down Venice Beach, thinking that Venice Beach would be full. Everybody apparently was in West Hollywood, so there were a few people out, but not many. We drove down the beach. We were coming back, and beautiful, beautiful sunset, and I said, hey, should we have a beer? I think it was at the Venice Ale House or something. Should we have a beer? And a beer turned into a few beers, which turned into Always O'Brien's, which was kind of a scrappy, dirty bar that I loved, that I still love the thought of, but it doesn't exist anymore. And then the next morning, I woke up in front of the house. She had left because her grandfather had had a stroke, so she went and took a plane, and I woke up in front of on the sidewalk, which I had many times. And by the way, connected to this movie, who lived close by, Roger Deakins, used to run every morning. So the few times that I woke up on the sidewalk, I remember hearing that of somebody running. And I would look up in my haze, and Roger would never look at me, but he would always wave. And I would go, oh my God, you know, and it was one of those things that it was like a moment where you go, as much as we love working together, as much as these guys love collaborating with me, they just accept the fact that this is me. This is just what Josh does. So I was supposed to see my grandmother at the time, and she was in the hospital. She was on her deathbed. She was 99 years old. I was very late. It was a couple of hours late, and I was kind of in charge of like who was going to come when and all this kind of stuff. And I had been dry for 10 days. And so I got there late, and I walked in, scratched and smelling and all that. And I remember the family kind of putting their head down when I walked in. And my grandmother lifted her head, and she looked at me, and she smiled, the biggest smile I can ever remember seeing. And the first thought that came into my head was, how dare me? This woman has lived 99 years on life's terms, and I have everything at my beck and call, and I'm trying to actively destroy it. Wow. So that was it. Yeah. I haven't had a drink since. Yeah.
Good for you. Wow.
But if you want to go out after this, I'm willing. I'm just kidding.
I know that. You know, I'm having a flashback to like the first Q&A that which I referred to, No Country for Old Men. You know, I was not wise, and I wasn't savvy about doing Q&As. And you come in, your sense of humor is amazing, deadpan, and the whole time I'm going like, oh my God, this is catastrophic. This is he hates me. Well. This is not going well, and you know, and
that's not true.
No, but like from my end was going like, oh my God, but it was like
now you're a true veteran.
No, I'm going like, okay, bring it on. You know, I can dish it back too.
Yeah, I know you can. I know you can.
The one moment in your book is just so spellbinding and horrifying and honest, is when you're at the top of your game, you just got nominated for the Oscar for Milk, and then you win the New York Critics Best Supporting Actor, and you go behind the mic.
Yeah.
And your description of it is just, it's heartbreaking.
But like I say, there's a sense of accountability there. And by the way, the book isn't just 240 pages of depression, you know.
It is, actually.
No, but it's not. No. But I tell you, now, you know, I began being terrified of that, of like going, oh my God, this book is just so gnarly. And then I'm starting to get reactions, and the reactions are all emotional, totally varied. I literally couldn't be more pleased and humbled by the reactions of
it's an incredibly well-written, poignant. Yes, there is some moments that are absolutely hysterical, and to your credit, you make fun of yourself.
But that's the point. You know, the point is that we're flawed, and that we're all flawed in this time of divisiveness and all that kind of stuff. I go like, at what point do we lean on each other? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think this was like me leaning on the lesser part of myself, leaning on the better part of myself. So it kind of represented that whole thing. So that night, Sean Penn gave me, it was like, what was the award? It was New York Film Critics.
Yeah, Best Supporting Actor.
And it's a really,
Robert De Niro is in the house. And
Robert De Niro and everybody, Penelope. I remember Penelope, who I gave an award
here in Santa Barbara.
In Santa Barbara for. And, just a lot of people I respected, but Penelope came up to me afterwards and she said, you don't need to do this. And I was like, I knew what she was saying. She was like, you can't. I went from somebody who worked very hard to just get any role for 22 years. And then suddenly I was being handed this stuff, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. And then you throw alcohol into the middle of it. And, so Ben Brantley had written a review that closed our play when I did True West on Broadway. Mm-hmm. And, we were getting standing ovations, full houses every night. And he had such power in New York that he wrote that review, and we had half the audience and nobody ever stood again. And I was like, wow, that's power. That's power. So it all kind of came out that night, and I was saying things. I mean, I'm looking out in the audience here, and I remember the audience there, and they were just like, I mean, like, what are you doing? And that was my way of, like, I think trying to express that you're not going to control me. You're not going to tell me how to be Hollywood, how to be, you know, whatever that was. And I just spiraled, you know. So that was part of that thing of, like, calling myself out on somebody who, which I've seen again and again and again. I've seen people go stratospheric, you know, from unknowns to the most famous people, where the whole world is watching their every move, and I feel great empathy for them. Not that I necessarily went through that, but I have great, because I've worked with a lot of those people, and I've seen people come and go, and I've never seen them again. And I've seen some people be pretty resilient and not take it too personally, you know, because they'll throw you up, they'll push you up to the top, and the minute you're on the top, they will cut you down.
Since I have you here, can I ask you, like, your reaction to certain roles that you don't talk about in the book?
Yeah.
For example, I'm a huge admirer of Flirting with Disaster.
One of my
and
favorites.
your armpit sequence with Patricia Arquette. Tell us about working on that film.
I mean, that film was one of the best experiences. It was Mary Tyler Moore, Lily Tomlin,
Alan Alda,
George Siegel, Téa Leoni, Patricia Arquette, Ben Stiller. Richard Jenkins was my boyfriend.
Richard Jenkins before we
So honestly, it was like Mark Wong, I think, was the role.
Yeah.
So I'm not a Wong, you know, but I went in and I got in there somehow, and I said, just get me in there and let me audition. And David really loved my audition. And so I got that role. Miramax was adamant about me not doing the movie.
Why?
I don't know, but adamant. I think I got paid $5,000 for that movie or something. And they were just like, no, no, no. And David fought for me. He fought for me. So it wasn't written exactly that way. I had a couple of tattoos, and then he said, what if we just put a bunch of tattoos on him? I said, that's a great idea. He's a bisexual ATF agent, which I love. And he's got these tattoos.
So ahead of his time.
It was. I mean, it really, really was. And he's a phenomenal filmmaker, and especially then, he was just bubbling with creativity. And then we had Patricia and I had a kissing scene, and it just didn't work, and we knew it. And then we sat down and we started talking about what could be better, like what seems to be more appropriate given the trajectory of what we'd been doing. And then I said, what about like a toe fetish? Which is big now, wasn't then.
It's always been big.
Has it? Okay. I believe
Not with
you.
me.
So I said that, and Patricia was like, no. And then she said, what about the armpit? It was Patricia that said, what about the armpit? And I think as she said it, she was scratching her head. And I just saw a bunch of hair sticking out, because she had this idea that she was very kind of hippie mom. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Kind of like in the foot thing, you know? So we did it, and I had wet wipes on the side, and we did that scene, and then he saw dailies, and he said, yeah, the hair is too much. And I was like, right? And then we did it again. She shaved. She was willing to shave, and we did it again, and it turned out like it was supposed to. So this character had an armpit finish. I loved doing that movie, by the way.
It's guys, if you have not seen it,
It's a fun
Flirting
movie.
with Disaster, directed by David O. Russell. And the armpit sequence will be ingrained in your head forever.
Yeah.
What about Sicario?
Sicario is, again, I turned down Sicario twice.
Why?
Because it was a really small role, you know, and I had some momentum at that point, and you know, this guy Denis Villeneuve, I had seen Incendie, which I thought was brilliant. I had seen a couple of, you know, his French-Canadian films, which I thought were great. And I don't know, it just didn't feel right. And I said no, and then he called, and then Emily called, and Benicio, I think, wrote me, and I wasn't going to do it. And then Roger Deakins called me, and he said, your face is on the drawing, stop being an asshole and get down here. I wasn't being an asshole, but that was just his, you know, wording. And then I just came, and we really developed that role into what it was. Because when directors say, they always say this to get you to do the role. They said, it's a blueprint. And you're like, yeah, man, I've heard that so many times. Like, why do you think we're so dumb? Just because I'm an actor, I'm not an idiot. And he goes, yeah, we're going to work on this, and then you get to the set, and it never happens. Whereas Denis, it was for real. And now I know Denis is one of my best friends now, that we actually develop. And it's not about how much you're in the movie. But why be in a movie if it's not, you know, if it doesn't make an imprint on you?
He's a throwback where, you
Oh,
know, he
he
does
is, man.
this independent,
Totally.
you know, he has a sensitivity of an independent filmmaker,
Yeah.
but with this big, humongous scope.
Capacity.
Yeah. So from there, now you've done 2 Dunes with him.
I've done 2 Dunes with him. I almost did Arrival, but Arrival didn't work out because of scheduling stuff. And then we'll probably do a 3rd Dune.
What was it like for you to, in Dune 1 and 2, the fact that now you're working again with Denis Villeneuve and then Javi, and, you know.
I mean, Javier, well, first of all, we had never done a scene together. And that scene that you just saw on the phone was a prank scene, really, because Javier had to leave that day, so he wasn't on set. So I was wearing earbuds. And I'm doing the scene, and I'm getting deep into it, and I'm all severe and emotional. And then I heard, hey, my friend, I am in the Bahamas right now having the best time. I mean, for real, that's what happened. And I turned around and looked at Ethan. It was the only time I've ever seen Ethan laugh. He was like, So, yeah, Javi, so we had never done a scene together. And when we did that scene together, it was super uncomfortable fun for us.
Yeah, but you guys became best of friends.
He's like he's
your brothers.
Sweetheart, we are.
Yeah.
For real.
He tells a story, and I want to hear your side of the story. He tells a story about shooting A Country for Old Men, that he has the haircut, and you guys would go to bars, and then he's like, he said, like, Roger, I would go to bars, and then there were all these women, and nobody would pay attention to me, and it was because of the damn haircut. And then you turn to him, and he goes, this is a lesbian bar. Is that for real?
Well, it was the Cowgirl Cafe. I mean, it's pretty obvious in the title, isn't it? The Cowgirl Cafe.
Hey, Javier is from Spain.
He's from Spain. But he wouldn't leave his apartment. I would go and make him come out. He didn't want to leave. He was like, I don't like violence, I don't drive, and I look like an idiot. So, you know, and I was like, nobody cares. We're in Santa Fe, man. They're all artists. Nobody cares. So we'd go out and have a few drinks, and Woody would come out with us, and we had a good time, man. He does karaoke really well.
Who does, Woody or Javi?
Javier.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
with that hair, imagine karaoke, like Javier singing the Go-Go's.
But that story is true. But it is true.
We got the beat.
But that story, it is true that about the lesbian bar and.
Oh, yeah. No, that's 100% true. This is the weird thing about No Countries. They said, could you feel it? That movie? Could you feel it? Academy Award. I was like, no, man, we had so much fun. We had so much fun. And by the way, I was just in Marfa 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago with Chris Stapleton doing a video for Whitehorse, which he just won Best Song and Best New Artist, or not New Artist, but Best Male Artist. And just the coolest ever, and I hadn't been back there in 18 years. So we're shooting in a bank. I walk in the bank, and who comes out? The manager of the bank. Wow, I know you. He said, yeah, I'm the first person Javier killed in the movie. I'm like, but you're running the bank now. Not like, what happened to you? He always ran the bank. But he had heard from a friend of a friend that they needed this character. And then he said, I read the scene, and I figured nobody would ever see this movie, so I tried it. And I got the part, and I did the part, and I saw the guy with the stupid haircut, and I was positive nobody was going to see the movie. So I said, great to see you again, man, after 18 years, you know what I mean? But yeah, it was a feeling like we were doing a very small independent movie that probably wasn't going to be very popular.
Mm-hmm. And then you go on to Avengers. How was that ride for you?
Really great, actually. You know, I mean, there's a thing. It's like the Goonies. You know, I'm lucky that I have enough films. You know, after the Goonies, I didn't have anything. Flirting with Disaster was really satisfying and gratifying.
It's a great
movie. not a ton of people saw it. You know, it kind of it began his career. You know, so with Avengers, you know, hey, you know, do you snap your fingers? You know, every picture, snap your fingers. You know, did you ever think people come up and they go, you know, excuse me, did you ever think about, like, if you killed half the universe, you probably had the power to create twice the resources? And I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
I'm not the director, I'm not the writer, I just snap the fingers and I get paid, you know what I mean? Sorry.
Yeah.
But the Russos, and developing that character, it was as good as any other experience that I had had. No Country, Milk, whatever, you know, because they had the they had the reference. They're smart enough to have the reference. And what Marvel did was genius, is they brought, you know, what should have been a C movie or whatever, or movies. They brought in Downey, they brought in Ruffalo, they brought in Scarlett, they brought in amazing people, you know, to act, Cheadle. And so they would come up to me, I'd be in the middle of some monologue, some Thanos monologue, and they'd go, like, hey man, you remember Scarface? And I'd be like, yeah. And it would get my attention. And then they would use these like 70s movies references where it's like, wow, this is a character. This is a real character, you know?
I have to ask you, because you work with one of my favorite people of all time, Max Barbaco, who grew up here.
Yes.
And then you guys did Brothers together.
Yeah.
What was it like working with him?
Do you know he's here tonight?
Is he here?
Yes. I do,
Max,
we won't say where, but yeah, as I was just walking back there to meet with you, he went, like that. He's a Santa Barbara guy.
He's a sweetheart.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart. We had a really, Brothers was loosely based, like as a comedy was loosely based on my family, you know. So I had called, you know, I'd been, once in a while, like every 6 months or somebody would come up and they'd go, God, you know, you and Peter Dinklage have massive heads. And I'd be like, thanks, man, nice meeting you, you know. People have a tendency to do that, and they go, God, you look my brothers, but they always mention the heads. So finally, after a couple of years, my producing partner and I called him and I said, do you think me and Peter Dinklage have huge heads? And he's like, oh yeah. I said, I'm going to call Peter Dinklage, and I called Peter Dinklage.
But when they said about big heads, it's like literal or
literal?
like
No, not egos, like massive skulls, like disproportionate bodies. Like I got
not about egos. You sure that it wasn't?
I think. I mean, I look at him. I don't see the ego. I don't perceive myself as having a massive ego. Read my book. You know,
I've read it twice.
I know you did. So, but I called him and I said, hey, and I told him, and he started laughing. He goes, yeah, I've heard that before, that we look alike. And I said, you want to do a movie together, play brothers? And he said, sure, let's do it. So we did it, and we brought in a writer. We found Max, and Max had done Palm Springs, which I thought was genius.
Yeah, it is.
And we started on this ride, and looking for my mother, or our mother,
Glenn
Close, and Brendan Fraser had just finished The Whale, wasn't out yet, and he came in and did his thing. Marissa Tomei came in and did her thing. It was really a silver platter, and sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. You know, I did the same thing with Jonah Hex. I kind of put together Jonah Hex. I brought in Malkovich, I brought in Fassbender, I brought in Michael Shannon, brought in Megan Fox, and then I had to say sorry afterwards.
Last question, because you have tons of books to sign out in front. Any regrets about being back in Santa Barbara?
Zero. Like literally, in
besides
all this,
doing the Q&A tonight.
No, dude, I love the Q&A. By the way, what you've done, like I was there early on. My short played here, being here for, you know, seeing you early on. This thing has turned into the place. It's amazing what you've done.
Look at that. No. But
seriously, and I'm not just saying that. It's just the truth.
Take credit for it. Your short started here. You did Q&As here. It's you started
But I got to tell you, this theater is the theater at 11 years old, which Avengers is, you know, Thanos is sort of based on. But 11 years old, I saw Apocalypse Now here. Why my dad took me to Apocalypse Now at 11 years old, I don't know. Read the book.
Hey, my mom and dad took me to see The Exorcist when I was 8 years old.
And then you and I got into film. There we go. There we go.
Yeah. You are awesome. Now that you're in Santa Barbara, please come see us often.
I would love to, man. I would love to.
And you,
my wife and I are very,
and you
very
gotta
happy here.
Let us know the secret. You keep getting handsomer and handsomer and handsomer and handsomer.
I feel the same way
No,
about
no,
you.
no. It's all
I
about
do.
you.
No, it's not.
You're the handsomest man. Jeez.
I will always be older than you.
No, I'm older than you are.
No, you're not.
Yes, you are. You were born in
68.
I was born in 63.
No way.